QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Receive payment form customization. Let's get into it with Intuit. QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2021. Here we are in our test template practice file. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the view dropdown, selecting the open windows list. In prior presentations, we've been taking a look at some templates for some of the more common forms in which we would want templates. Number one being the invoice, because we're going to provide that to the customer. Number two being the create sales receipt, because it'll probably be provided to the customer as well. An estimate, number three, because that's often something that we may provide to a customer if we're in the industry that we need to be doing so. And then the next one we could create a custom form for is the receive payments. Now, traditionally, we have not had customization features for this until recently in 2021 edition, because this is really thought of as kind of like an internal form, meaning the invoice is really the form that you're going to be sending to someone else, increasing the receivables and increasing sales. Then you expect payment in some format at a future point in time. This form then decreasing the accounts receivable and recording that payment that has been received. So typically you don't need to provide this form to the client. It might just be an internal type of form that we're doing for data input purposes, but it might be a nice form to provide to clients because it gives that added touch of contact. So we might want to give like this form. It might be like a thank you form for the payment that has then been received, and provide some type of verification that indeed the payment has been received. So we could then customize this form. Let's do so by going to the lists up top, going to the templates. So now we're looking at the receive payment type form. Now, if you don't see a receive payment type form here, then what you want to do is go back to the home page. We can then open up the receive payment item, and this will open up the receive payment. So now we're going to we're using a template in this format. Close this back out, and then go back to the templates, and you should have a standard payment receipt item down here. Now, if you already have one set up, same kind of formatting that you want to set up. Most people may not have a custom receive payment form set up already at this point in time. If you do, though, then maybe you want to basically take that one and make some more customizations to it. To do that, you'd want to click on it and then duplicate it first, duplicate it, and then make adjustments to it. Or you might want to create a new template, as we'll take a look at soon, and then make adjustments to that. Now, there's not a whole lot in terms of downloading. The other option is to basically download a template and make adjustments to a downloaded template. But because the payment receipt is such a new thing, right now there's not a whole lot of pre-designed templates. So you're kind of on your own for your pre-designing templates here. Let's just take a look at the formats. We're going to go to the templates, rise up, and we're going to add a new one. And we're looking at the payment receipts this time, payment receipts, and I'm going to say OK. So we have our same kind of options over here, this form being a little bit different than the ones we've seen before. All the other ones are somewhat similar in that we have an invoice that basically bills the client, looks similar to a sales receipt. You know, the difference being that we already got paid in the sales receipt, and an estimate looking very similar because it's the form that represents the projection into the future. The payment receipt a little bit different, but still somewhat similar, because now we're recording the payment that has now been received. So a similar kind of layout. We'll have the payment receipt here. This is the standard layout. Let's go to the print preview and just check it out. And if we zoom into it, then we've got the payment receipt up top, the name, the receive from, the date, the payment method that we got from the customer, the payment amount, amounts due, and then date, invoice number, because this is going to be tying to an invoice that we have. And again, that's usually an internal kind of thing because we're tying it to the invoice that has been paid. And then the amount due and the amount applied. That's the basic kind of layout that we have here. Now then we have our typical kind of adjustments, so you can then manage the template. So if you wanted to put a custom name to the template here, then you can say we're looking at the new payment template, and we could then adjust this for, let's say, new test one, or it won't let me put a 1 there. Test 1 template, and then I'm going to say OK. So there we have that. Now we're in there. We can add the logo, same as the prior templates. We'll just add a logo up top. Also note when you go into these images, just to click off the logo and back onto it, some of these images that were taken in place when we created one of the other custom templates or downloaded the templates are downloaded here. So you might reuse some of those images. You have those images from downloading the template, which is nice. So you have those housed and you can reuse them to standardize your forms. So then we have our color settings. We can set the color settings as we've seen. We can adjust this things like the line items individually, and we can go to change fonts and we can make them a different font. We can make it large. We can underline it. We can make it a different color, same as we've seen in the past in a kind of a standard type of way. So there we have the company name largenized without having to do anything fancy, and the layout designer. Remember, these are the basic customization as with all the other forms. Then we have the additional customizations, which is still pretty standardized. And then we have the layout designer, which we can get more advanced in the layout designer. So then we have the company name, on or off, company address, fax number, phone number, web, and email, as we've seen in the past. This update information takes us back to the information basically that we input typically when we start the company file. Some of that company information, then we choose whether or not to include it on these particular forms. Going to close this back out, and then we can go to the additional customization. We have a similar kind of field here, a little bit less in the header option, column options, print options. We can make the template active or inactive here, although we can right click on it and do that as well. So default title, we can call it a payment receipt. We might want to call it, you could call it something other than the payment receipt. You might just call it a receipt, for example. And you can adjust the name, and that'll adjust the name of the form up top. And so, and you could make it a, thank you for payment, you could put up top. Doesn't quite fit, but something like that. Payment, pay, something like that. In any case, then you can have, obviously the date on or off, the payment method. So you can turn on the payment method on or off if you want to have that included. The check number that you could have on or off, and the payment amount, and the total due, which you would probably want to have on. So then we have the columns that we can be adjusting. We have the date, the invoice number, amount, and amount applied. So they are in that order. You could adjust the order if you want. Like if you want the invoice number first, you could say I want the invoice number first, and then it'll change that around. Invoice number, then the date, and the amount, and so on and so forth. Print, you got the similar print options in the that we've seen in the past. Probably the default options would be the best ones to do. Then you can go to the layout designer, as we've seen in the past, and you've got your layout designer tools here. To take a look at what these tools can do, take a look at the invoice, where we went into this in a bit more detail. I won't go through all the tool details, but you can go through and you can customize this form in a similar way, in a much more advanced way with this tool. So then I'm going to say OK, and then OK, and OK. So there's our custom form now. So now if I was to go to the receive payment type form, to the home page, and I go to the receive payment form. So if we go into the payment receipts here, then notice we don't have the option to toggle between the forms on this setup, but we do it in the formatting. If I go to the second tab, the formatting, we can manage the templates up top. Managing the templates, here's the one we just created. And then I can close this back out and close this back out. And then here's my toggle. I want to go from this one to the test 1 payment. That's the one I want. So that if we go back to the main page and just check it out by going to the print and payment, and then we're going to say not now here, and then I want to just preview what it would look like. We have now our adjusted form. So I'm going to close this back out. I'm going to close this and close this back out. So we looked at some of the most common forms, and again, the most common forms that you would be customizing would be the items that you're going to provide to the customer, such as the invoice, the create sales receipt, the estimate possibly, and possibly the receive payment. The other one that could be there is the credit memo. So let's just kind of review the list again. If we go to the lists drop down and we go to the templates, then you can do a similar kind of process. If I go to the rise up and I just look at like the custom templates. So if I say I want to download templates, so I'm going to say rise up, download templates, and So here's kind of the idea. We could do the similar process for the credit memo as well. So that's probably the next one in line that you would be, if there's like a refund of something of some kind, that's another document that quite possibly would be given to the customer, although hopefully not done as often, and therefore could use some customization there as well. So you can go through a similar process with some of the other forms as well. So these are the main ones, however, that we would go through and possibly want to have customized.